Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Yeah. It looks like we're going to Gimel. So we'll just review the Shulchan Aruch, from yesterday. We did a little bit quickly, so I'll read it one more time. So it says, "Hanotel tzarich le'agbiya yadav." As we said, right, when you wash your hands, you got to lift your hands up. Daino rashetz b'tav. So that means your fingers, right? Not the whole arm. Not necessary to do that. למעלה, שלא יצאו מים מחוץ לפרק ויחזרו אותם אליהם. So it says, right, what's the problem? We're worried that the water will go out, will leave the hand and go into the, beyond the wrist, and then come back and defile the hands. So let's see how the Mishnah Berurah explains this. Let's take a look. Right, so Mishnah Berurah explains it very nicely. We already talked about it just yesterday, but good to see what he says here. So he says that what's the concern? Maybe perhaps the water, the first time that he poured the water, right, will go beyond the hand and go into beyond the wrist, whatever, the joint, and then it's going to come back. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem is that water is impure. Why is it impure? Because the first water that you pour on the hands becomes impure. That's why we should do another pouring in order to remove that water. That's the whole point of it. But the problem is that if it went beyond the hand, it could be the second pouring that you do will not reach that place, and therefore that water will come back and make your hand impure. That's why we lift up the hands, right? That's the way we do it. Okay, so Mishnah Berurah explains it very nicely. You don't need anything less than more than that. So it says the Ramah here. Right. So the Ramah says the other solution, right, which we discussed also yesterday in the Bet Yosef, which is to point the hands down. Right. This way, it won't. The water will never reach that area, beyond the wrist, whatever. because everything is going down. So how do you do that? The way you do it is, says the Rama, that you're going to point your hands down all the way, from beginning to the end, of the washing of the hands, the whole process. You're going to be pointing your hands down. But then he says, right, דאז יצאו המים מחוץ לפרק ויחזרו, רק יזהר שהוא יגביה תחילה ראשי אצבעותיו. So he says, but you have to be careful, as don't do half and half, Don't do like half the time up and then half the time down, because then it's going to defeat the whole purpose. Why is that? Because the water that you did when you paced it up will now come back and make the hands impure. So that defeats the whole purpose there. So you don't want to do that. So either you want it up or down, right? But not half and half. Okay. That's what he says. Then we go on to Shulchan Aruch. It says, והיינו כשאינו נוטל כל היד עד מקום חיבור היד עם הזרוע. Right, so he says that applies when that he washes the whole, he doesn't wash the whole hand until the place of the joint, right, with the wrist. But if he washes until there, he doesn't have to lift up his hands. So, and then he says in parentheses here, some argue with this. But the truth is, we need to explain why, if he washes the whole hand, that we don't have this problem anymore. You don't have to lift up your hands anymore. So let's look at the Mishnah Berurah here and see what he says here. Okay, so you know what he says, right? He says, look in what I wrote in the beginning. So let's look at the beginning, right? And we'll see. He refers us to the beginning of the Mishnah Berurah. So let's look over there. Let's see. So he says here in the beginning, Aleph. Okay, so Mishnah Berurah here gets into this whole theory, right? There's a whole theory going on here, So I'm going to explain to you guys what he says here. It's very worthwhile, to look at this. He sums it up really well. So here we go. Right, so he says like this. So he says the commentaries here explain like this. The Chayshinan were concerned, as we said right before, maybe some of the water will go out right beyond the hand. It's going to go beyond the joint. Tehu lemala makom hatila, which is beyond the place of the hand. She'itkinu hachachamim, that the rabbis decreed to wash that area. V'sham af shebao alehem mayim shniim. So he says over there, once it goes beyond that area, even if you pour there a second pouring, it doesn't really purify over there. That's very interesting, right? So he's telling you that the water which is beyond the joint, beyond the wrist, over there, the second pouring will not purify the first one. The tumat yadayim b'taratam hu ad perek dafka. So he says because this whole concept only applies with the hand. So in other words, once you're getting beyond the hand, and you're talking about the body, so over there it does not apply this concept. Whoa, very interesting. Okay, let's read on. It says, therefore, im en magbia yadav yachzu hamayim v'tamim b'hem letoch haperek. So he says the problem is like this. That's the reason why we're telling you to raise your hands, because otherwise, that water will come back on your hands and defile them. And that's even if you poured it twice there, because over there, the second pouring doesn't really purify it. Only on the hand. Wow. This is exactly what I was looking for. When we were learning this yesterday, I was looking for somebody to really explain this, right, in detail, so we can understand the full picture here. Get the whole picture. Okay, so then he goes on. So he says, "Kach pershu rov mefarshim." So he says most of the commentaries explain like that. So he says, according to that, even if he washed the whole hand until the joint, so you have to lift up your hands anyway. But here's the thing, right? That what he's explaining now, it doesn't really agree with the Shulchan Aruch, because the Shulchan Aruch said just the opposite. We're going to see right now. Right? So now he gives you another explanation, right? Some argue with this. They say like this, right? Now he's explaining the Shulchan Aruch. This is exactly what I was looking for. So he says the whole point is like this. According to Shulchan Aruch, if you wash the whole hand until the wrist, right? So he says we're not really concerned anymore that the water will go beyond that point. So he says, therefore, the main concern is what? That if he didn't wash, he only went until the joint of the fingers. So he says that's the real size according to many authorities. He says above in the chapter before. מן הכלי לחוץ לקישי אצבעותיו, דקשה לצמצם שם ממילא, נטמעו שם לחוץ לקישי אצבעותיו, וקשה לצמצם שם ממילא. So here's the thing, right? What he's telling you is like this. The reason why the Shulchan Aruch here is telling you that if you wash the whole hand, you don't need to anyway point the fingers up anymore, is because the whole problem is like this, that if you wash the first time the whole hand, and then the second time you did a little bit less. So what's going to happen is that you did only until the end of the fingers, right? The joint of the fingers. So then what's going to happen is the water which is above that joint on the hand is going to come down and make impure the whatever is below. So therefore, he says, right, that's the reason why Shulchan Aruch says if you wash the whole hand, there's no concern. Why? Because the whole hand has already been purified as is. So therefore, there's nothing else you need. You're all set. Okay, if you guys got this, if you don't understand, ask me. If you have any questions, about this. Okay, very interesting. So that's one scenario where the Shulchan Aruch says that if you wash the whole hand, you don't need to stick them up anymore in the air. And that's also another advantage, by the way, that there is that a person washes his whole hand, as opposed to doing, half or three quarters, right? Not everybody does the whole hand. Some people do like half, three quarters, which is okay, by the way. But the thing is, as we said, we prefer to do the whole thing, you know, especially according to the Rif, right, who says that you got to wash the whole hand. Anyway, uh, so then we have the other scenario, which you don't need to hold your hands up. What is that? That you pour the Revi'it on each hand, right? First time. How does that help you? The pouring Revi'it. Because what happens is, we said in Beit Yosef, it helps you because when you pour the Revi'it on each hand, the water does not become impure. It retains its purity. So therefore, there's no concern anymore. So if you do one of those things, right, either you wash the whole hand, number one, or number two, you poured a Revi'it on the hand the first time, so then you have no concern about holding your hands up. Even though the custom is to do it anyway, we do it. Everybody does it. It's just a custom. I mean, because monkey see, monkey do, right? Whatever we do, whatever everybody else does. Yeah, right. That's the way it is. Yeah. Okay, it's good, by the way, to do that. It's good to be a monkey in that case. Why? Because, just in case you didn't pour enough water or whatever it is, right? So this way you're covered anyway, right? You're covered from either way. So you're good to go. So fantastic. Okay, good. Let's go back to Shulchan Aruch, right? This is why I wanted to review it today, because yesterday we didn't get a chance to ask all these questions and analyze all this stuff. We didn't get into it so good. I wanted to make sure we had clarity over here. Okay, good. So let's go on. Right? This is what he says, we just said. If you pour the Rebit also, it's fine. Since there's no impure water over there, you don't have to stick it up anymore. Now we have a third scenario, which we already discussed in the past, right? Which is what? That we said if you dip your hands into a mikveh, right, you don't need to hold your hands up. Why is that? Anybody can answer me? Okay, so the answer is that because that water does not become impure, the mikveh water. So there's no need for that anymore. The mikveh water stays pure. So in these three scenarios, you don't need to hold your hands up, but you'll do it anyway because that's a custom. You're used to it. It's like it's already become like like the habitual. Okay,
Rabbi, so one will be the mikvah, and what will be the other two again?
the other two, as we said, right? One is that you wash the whole hand, right,
Okay.
until the wrist. That's number two. Or number three, you would pour the revi'it the first time, which is 3 ounces. So if you pour the first pouring 3 ounces, you're good.
You don't have to lift your hands, right?
Right. That's it. So we got those three things, right? Okay, it's good to understand, all this stuff, so we understand what's going on. And we also know the reasons why, behind it. That's also good. That's good.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. When you learn this way, right, in a comprehensive manner, in a thorough manner, you remember it also better this way, But if you learn the Kitzer books, Kitzer, the problem is with these Kitzer books, comes in here, goes out there, right? Because you don't understand what's going on, so you forget very quickly.
I also have that COVID head. So he read and then said, "What?"
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's watch them out to you.
Thank you.
God bless. Baruch Hashem. Now COVID is just a little cold. In the old days we were scared of that. Whatever.
I'll remember. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. That was a different time. Okay, so Hashem should help us. What can I tell you? Anyway, so that's the story. Let's go on. Let's see if there's anything else to finish here. יש אומרים דעים שופך על ידיו גם ג' פעמים אינו צריך להיזהר בכל זה והן יגעו לחלקל, right? So it says, also the Ramah brings here, or somebody, I don't know if this is the Ramah really, somebody brings this here in the parentheses here, which is that there's also another opinion, opinion number 4, right? Which is that if you also wash 3 times, you don't have to worry about this. Like a Sephardim, we do 3 times, So you don't have to worry about it if you do 3 times. But the truth is, that the Bet Yosef rejected this opinion. He didn't accept this, as we saw yesterday, So, right, take it with a grain of salt, whatever. Whatever it is. He said this is not correct, this one. Okay, so, but he does say here, right, says the custom is to be lenient regarding that, So I guess by some communities, it's customary to be lenient when you do 3 times. Meaning what? That you don't have to hold up your hand anymore as well. Same thing, right? Now, as we said, right, the Bet Yosef rejected this. So now that we seem to understand, right, what the reasons are here, why would you want to reject this claim? 3 times. So let me take a try at it, right? Let me take a swing. See if I can explain it to you. Okay, so as we said, right, the whole concern is like this. The whole concern is that the water, which is above your fingers, will come down, right, and make them impure. So there are ways to solve that problem, as we already saw. But the thing is, if you do it 3 times, right, pour your hand 3 times. So how does that help you to avoid this problem? That's the question, right? So, because theoretically the problem could still exist, right? And let me try to explain to you why that is. Because after all, right, what are we concerned about here? That he's not going to wash his whole hand every time. So if he doesn't, right, so then that water which is above his fingers can still come down and make his hands impure, even though he did it 3 times. So the truth is, doing it 3 times doesn't really solve the problem. So that's what the Bet Yosef held. That doesn't really solve the problem. Okay, interesting. So then the question is, if that's the case, why do we do it 3 times? What's the reason for that? It doesn't really solve the problem. So what's the reason we do it? So the answer is that there's a concept like this in halakha, which is that the first washing is coming to actually, clean your hands from the grime, that may be on it, some grime on it. So this is washing number 1. Number 2 is coming, to purify the hands. But the problem is then the water gets, impure, as we said. And then pouring number 3 is supposed to remove the impure water, right? So now your hands can be pure. And this is the reason why we do it 3 times. So it's a good custom, to do 3 times. Not exactly an obligation so much, but definitely it's a nice custom, and that's the custom of the Sfardim. And as you guys told me, also maybe some Ashkenazim they do it like that, which I can believe that. I buy that. So it's all good, especially what we see here, right? It seems like there's a custom like that. Okay, it's all good. So Baruch Hashem, it's all good. So I guess we'll move on to Bet. Okay, so it says like this. Well, Sefer HaMitzvot, it says the Torah. It says in the Sefer HaMitzvot, Katav Mashe Mazkir Mayim Rishonim, that which he mentions, the first water, which means second water, Hanu Davka B'Mayim Shebayim Taher. It's talking about water which is coming to purify. So let's see inside the Torah. There's a little bit more here to see there. Mhm. Can't find this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a search. Maybe the search will do it. Here we are. Okay, so it says, "V'sefer HaMitzvot katav." It says in the Sefer HaMitzvot, as we said, that we already read, and now let's see what else he says here. Right, so it says again. It says over there, that what you mentioned, the first water, second water. I know it's only regarding water which is coming to purify. So, right, besides this, you do another time. So, in other words, according to this opinion, as we said, right, you got to do 3 times, as our custom is, the Sfarim. Why? As we said, right, the first one is coming to remove the grime. The whole davar shechotzets, and anything which was going to interpose. So he says it wasn't mentioned in the Mishnah this. So he says therefore you got to do 3 times. One to remove the dirt, and 2 times to purify the hands. Tanan, okay, that's the end of it, right? So that's exactly what we just mentioned. So that is the tour here. So let's see what the Bet Yosef says about this. So it says also written in Tosfot this thing. בפרק כל הבשר, over there in Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, which is in Chulin. But דבר פשוט הוא, so it says it's obvious. שאם ידיו נקייות, די לו בשתי פעמים. So he says, what's obvious? That if your hands are clean, then twice is enough. Right? Like it says in the Mishnah. Right, so the Mishnah says twice. So then why do we do 3 times? One is to remove the grime. So says Bet Yosef, if there is no grime, your hands are clean. So then just go to do twice, right? But as we said, the custom is not to do 3 times. Why? Why is that? Because people don't pay attention if they're grimy, they're not grimy. So just to cover all the bases, right? We do it 3 times. But I have seen many Ashkenazi they do twice. Which is okay. The hands are clean. That's fine. Okay, that's the story there. So let's go to Shulchan Aruch. So says Shulchan Aruch, "Hanotel yadav shofech alehem k'tzat me'arvi'it." Right. So he says, how do you do it? Right, to wash your hands. How do you proceed? He says the first thing you do is a part of the water. You spill once, you pour out once, to remove the grime. The whole davar shechotzets, anything which interposes. And then wash second time. So that water becomes impure, as we said. And the third time, right, the tayar mayim to purify the water, which is on the hands. So as we said, right, that's a custom 3 times. But it says if there is no grime on the hands, so then 2 is enough, right? So you can even do 1 time, he says. Right. In other words, do 1 time Revi'it, and that'll be you won't need to do twice. Why? Because that already purified the water, right? Doing Revi'it, as we said. We don't don't have to do twice in that case. So again, right, what is he saying over here? If you poured the first time Revi'it on your hands, you will not need to do second time even. Why is that? Because that'll purify the hands in the water, and there's no impurity there left over. So therefore, you're good to go. Okay, that's the story there. So says the Ramah here So it's the same thing also applies. He says, if he had a lot of water, so again, right, it says the same thing you do. The first one is to remove the grime, and then, right, as we said, to pour one every eat, and you don't need anything else because that purifies the water and everything. It's like Mem Shlishim. Right, so there you go, right? The Ramah says you don't need 3 times. So hence, right, the custom of the Ashkenazim, as we said, right, many of them they do twice, which is exactly what the Ramah is telling you here. Okay, and I'll tell you that. But it's as we said, right? If you're like in a place where, things are a little bit like the water is limited, whatever. Let's say you don't have any tap water, you just have some bottled water, whatever, and you don't have a lot. So you can do even once, that'll be fine. Just put a revit on each hand, and you're good to go. And even if you didn't put a revit on each hand, it's still kosher. Why? Because you can, just put your hands up and dry them, and that's it. You're good. You're good. So either way, it's fine. So there's a time where you do 3 times. There's a time where you can do twice, and there's a time where you can do 1 time, depending on the circumstances, right? As we said. Okay. Then he goes on. So he says the Ramah that when you wash your hands, right, afterwards he says you got to rub them one on the other, right? Yeah, we didn't I don't think we saw this in a bit, Yosef. So we'll see right here in the Mishnah Berurah. Hopefully, he'll explain why he says to do this to rub them. Let's take a look. So says Mishnah Berurah, the reason why he tells you to rub your hands is to remove the dirt, he says. It's only the lechatchila, he says, but it doesn't really prevent the washing. Interesting. So, right, according to what we said before, by the way, if your hands, are not grimy, they're clean, so then you wouldn't have to do this, right? Even according to this opinion. Okay, very good. So let's go on. So here he says the Torah like this. Tanan, right? We learn in the Mishnah, Mosifin ala shniyim and Mosifin ala rishonim. We add to the second water, but not to the first one. So what does that mean? Beresh explains with Yosef. Beresh Masechet Yadayim. It's in the beginning of Masechet Yadayim. Beresh Sham Rosh. The Rosh explains, "Anotel Yadav tzarich litol ad haperek." So the person who washes his hands has to wash until the joint. V'rishonim u'shniyim datan b'chulan mechitin. So it says you got to wash twice, right? As we learned in the Mishnah, when he pours twice his hands on the hands, to wash them well. So the same thing also applies to washing imadam shofech al shtei adab. Person is washing, pouring on 2 hands. Eat kechad, one in one shot of eat. Itaru yadav, his hands are pure. But if he pours it twice, The first one got defiled. And the second one purifies it. The first one. And they Amra matnitin. And our Mishnah said the im matal rishonim, that if you wash the first, metarim et rishonim. One time. If you wash the first, they didn't come to the joint, and mosif aleim doesn't add to that. Shekol mashe mosif aleim hu mosif tuma. Because if he adds to it, he brings more tuma, more impurity. Kivan shelo natal bepam echad, because he didn't wash one time al perek until the joint. So they would have to dry his hands first, and then wash. But he says the second water that are coming to purify the first one, you can add to them. Okay, so this is a little bit long, so I guess we'll continue next time. Bezat Hashem. Usually I would have gone a little bit longer with you, but because of the building of the sukkah, I'm a little bit tired, so like fatigue is setting in, and my brain is not working so good. So excuse my the lack of brain power. Bezat Hashem, we'll try to get some more brain power next week, Bezat Hashem, when we resume our classes, which is going to be Bezat Hashem on Kol HaMoed Sunday, right? So I wish you Chag Kasher v'Sameach. Enjoy your holiday and make sure you do all the mitzvot that you need to do, Bezat Hashem, for the holiday. And Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov, have a good night. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness, Bezat Hashem. And keep praying for our valiant soldiers doing an amazing job. I heard something is cooking right now. Something is going to be coming up soon. So Bezat Hashem, we'll keep our eyes open. We'll see what happens. So we'll see you Sunday, Bezat Hashem. Laila Tov.
Rabbi, how long does it typically take to get an eskrog and lulav to send from Israel in those nice boxes that they send?
Well, I wouldn't. I would just get it locally if I was you.
Yeah.
It may be too late now, to get shipped from there.
Okay. Well, the synagogue orders a ton of them, so I'll see what they got there.
That's it. Just go run over there to the shul and pick it up. Because they run out. If you don't get there on time, it'll be all gone.
Oh boy! Usually they have them tables laid out with everyone's name on the table.
Okay, great. Fantastic. If you have an order, I guess you'll be fine. Hopefully. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Where are we leaving the area where to start for Sunday?
Next time.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, that's a good question. Let's see. Good question. You know what? I guess we'll just do Bet Yosef Gimel. We'll start from the beginning. Because we didn't really do much, So we'll just start the Bet Yosef Gimel.
Thank you, God.
God bless you.
Amen. Thank you
All
so
the best.
much.
Can't believe until Sunday we're gonna meet again.
Bezat Hashem.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
All the best.